So, who are we talking about today? What are we talking about today? We're talking about the filmmaker Michael Mann, specifically three of his most beautiful, lush films, and that is Thief, Manhunter, and Heat. So, who's Michael Mann? Michael Mann's cinema is a world of precision. He creates nocturnal landscapes pulsing with neon heat, definitely inspired to Live and Die in LA, another film I would put in this similar category. Moral solitude, and the hum of professionalism. From his early works, Mann has been obsessed with men who define themselves through the perfection of their craft, whether they be thieves, cops, or killers, all bound by codes of conduct as meticulous as the visual worlds they inhabit. So, for example, in Thief 1981, Manhunter 86, Heat 95, Mann refines this vision, creating a trilogy of existential crime stories that mirror one another in tone, theme, and design. Each film, sit back, relax, watch, is truly a meditation on control, vulnerability, and the unfortunate cost of obsession and the fleeting beauty of human connection in an indifferent world. Now, at the heart of these films lies Mann's unmistakable aesthetic, a synthesis of visual poetry and technical rigor. His cities shimmer like mirages. Chicago's industrial glow in the beautiful film Thief, the sterile blues and fluorescence of Manhunter, and Los Angeles' vast glittering sprawl in Heat. Every frame feels sculpted by light and texture, expressing emotion through architecture, color, and sound as much as through dialogue. Mann's use of the camera, often handheld, gliding, or locked in still contemplation, transforms urban spaces into a psychological arena where men grapple with their inner codes. His digital precision and analog melancholy fuse into a style that feels both hyperreal and dreamlike. Now, beyond the surface of style and craft, Mann's cinema is about the existential loneliness that comes with mastery. Frank and Thief, Will Graham in Manhunter, and Neil Macaulay in Heat are all men trapped by their own perfection, almost hermetically sealed, capable of control in every aspect of their professional lives, yet undone by the uncontrollable pull of human need. Now, Mann's genius lies in how he frames these contradictions not as moral failures, but as inevitable truths of the human condition. Through his work, Mann invites us to see beauty in discipline, tragedy in ambition, and poetry in the fleeting moments when a man's code collides with his own heart. Now, with that, we're going to dive in a little bit into Thief, followed by Manhunter, and then finishing with Heat. I'm going to give a very quick synopsis of each film and then dive into some of the elements that make each of these works of art so unique and unmistakably Michael Mann. Let's start with Thief. Thief is a film, came out in 1981, stylized crime drama that follows Frank, beautifully played by James Caan, who's a master safecracker who dreams of escaping his criminal life to build an honest future. After years of operating alone, Frank makes a deal with a powerful mob boss to pull one last big job. Another theme that comes through a lot of Michael Mann's films, a heist that will fund his ideal vision of freedom, home, family, and a clean slate. But as the criminal world closes in, Frank's meticulous sense of control begins to unravel, and he's bathed in neon light, underscored by Tangerine Dream's pulsating electric score. Thief is both a tense, methodical crime film and a brooding portrait of a man whose code and dreams cannot survive the world that he is unfortunately trapped in. In Thief, Mann's signature style emerges almost fully formed, a blend of gritty realism and dreamlike precision that would define his later works. One of the most striking hallmarks is his use of light and color. Mann transforms Chicago's industrial landscape into a nocturnal canvas of deep blues, reflective chromes, and neon orange, giving the film a heightened, almost mythic texture. The city isn't just a backdrop, but a psychological mirror for Frank's inner world, cold, exacting, and alive with danger. Mann's obsession with people that are really, really good with their craft is right in the center here. The film opens with a meticulous, wordless heist sequence, and every moment, sound and tool, carefully observed, action, movement, perfectly studied. The focus on the process, on the tactile detail of craft is essential Mann. He approaches crime the way another filmmaker might approach ballet or jazz, as a choreography of precision and ritual, practiced, studied. The characters' tools, techniques, and codes of conduct are filmed with reverence, underscoring the idea that work, even illicit work, can be existential expressions of self. Now, equally distinctive in Mann's fusion of intimacy and distance is his desire to drill through steel, through the very image in the film that can't breach his own emotional walls. So Frank in the film is drilling through steel multiple times, but the irony is he is completely untouchable within his own emotional self. Mann captures this tension through quiet, introspective dialogue scenes, particularly the iconic diner conversation between Frank and Jesse, which is absolutely hilarious when they leave the bar, drive to the diner. Just if you want to watch a scene from the film, that diner scene is incredibly well written and beautifully acted. Now, the Tangerine Dream score amplifies this duality, synthetic, propulsive, and melancholic. In Thief, Mann creates a world where emotions hum beneath machinery, and where the beauty of control and the tragedy of urban isolation are absolutely inseparable. All right, moving on to Manhunter, 1986. Now, Michael Mann has sharpened his aesthetic, okay, into something both still clinical, but there's more of this hallucinatory psychological thriller in this film. The way he uses light, color, and quiet dread. Now, his use of color as emotion is especially fine-tuned here. If you look at this shot, sterile blues, cool whites dominate the world of FBI profiler Will Graham, reflecting his disciplined, analytical mind, while the warmer, lurid reds and greens of the killer's world evoke obsession, desire, and absolute chaos. Now, Mann uses architecture in all of his films beautifully. However, here he specifically uses it with light and interior design to map the psyches of his characters. Modernist glass houses, empty hallways, and reflections of mirrored surfaces, all serving as visual metaphors for the fractured nature of perception and identity. Now, Mann's interest in professionalism is on display, once again carried over from Thief, but here it becomes more cerebral. The film meticulously traces Graham's investigative method, how he reconstructs a killer's psychology, immersing himself so deeply that the boundary between the hunter and the hunted is blurred. Now, Mann's fascination with men, defined by their work, turns inward here. Graham's professionalism is both his gift and his curse, isolating him emotionally and pulling him toward the same darkness that he's seeking to understand. Now, in this film, Mann's camera is constantly lingering on the tools of investigation, the sterile spaces of forensic labs, the eerie quiet of crime scenes, all rendered with a painterly attention to mood and rhythm. And also, these are the early seedlings of all of these forensic shows that would come later and dominate mainstream television. Now, finally, Manhunter reveals Mann's gift for stylized emotional minimalism. The dialogue is sparse. Performances are controlled. Emotion seeps through tone and atmosphere rather than exposition. And the use of music is once again on display here, from the prime movers, Strong as I Am, to the haunting finale underscored by Iron Butterflies, Inagata da Vida, which is an absolute banger in this film and a stunning conclusion. It turns the procedural climax into operatic form here. It's like this building, and this incredible release at the end. Now, in Manhunter, Mann infuses the cool logic of investigation with the fever of obsession, creating a world that's both hyper-real and dreamlike, a crime story told as visual psychology. And I enjoy the film Silence of the Lambs. However, Manhunter is on a completely different level, playing with completely different forms. Highly, highly recommend. Finally, for me, the premiere, the perfect Michael Mann film, Heat. I remember being very young, watching Heat in the theaters back in '95, and it blew me away. It is a masterwork in the heist drama. In Heat '95, Michael Mann reaches the full, absolute full expression of his cinematic vision. A grand, absolutely stunning operatic crime saga where once again loneliness and moral symmetry converge. The bank heist scene at the end, the shootout in downtown LA alone, stunning operatic crime saga that inspired dozens of films. Now, Heat unfolds across a sprawling Los Angeles rendered in Mann's signature nocturnal palette. He specifically chose to use locations in LA that had not been used before. And the palette in this film, cool blues, sodium streetlights, and the shimmering glass of modern architecture. There's so much and so many shots of glass shattering in this film. The city itself becomes a living organism, vast, impersonal, humming with existential energy. Cars, 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 and highways. Mann's visual precision turns every skyline, an empty freeway, into a reflection of his characters' inner worlds, where order and chaos are constantly blurred. His use of widescreen here, framing and deep focus, creates a sense of both intimacy and absolute isolation, placing his characters, meticulous professionals, once again on opposite sides of the law, against an infinite and very indifferent landscape, offering no means of support. So once again, we have Mann's obsession with mastery and discipline, reaching basically mythic scales here, with two of the greatest American actors of their generation going head to head here in the prime of their powers. Neil McCauley, played by Robert De Niro, Vincent Hanna, played by Al Pacino. And they're mirror images of each other in the film. And which better actors to choose than two actors who had never been in the same film at the same time in the same scene, that have very different styles, but both legends coming together. Who better to play these roles, to mirror image off of each other? Two men consumed by work, bound by codes that leave very little room for genuine, lasting human connection. Mann's camera work tracks their movements with almost documentary precision, capturing the mechanical grace of the heist sequence and the tactical intensity of police surveillance. Every gesture, glance, reload of the gun, a decision made in silence, becomes part of a ritual, once again, of duty. The iconic downtown shootout, as mentioned earlier, exemplifies Mann's commitment to authenticity and sound design. Raw, deafening realism transforms the action into a symphony of gunfire, rapid fire. Yet beneath the procedural brilliance, Heat is profoundly human. Once again, Mann is exploring the cost of obsession, the emotional solitude that comes from defining oneself entirely through their craft. The quiet diner scene between Hanna and McCauley distills the film's philosophical core. Mutual recognition between two men who understand they can never coexist, but also cannot help respecting each other's dignity through the Great Divide. Now, in Heat, Mann fuses genre filmmaking with existential tragedy. Again, the genre, the heist film, at its best, weaving in this existential tragedy, this philosophical approach around loneliness, isolation, crafting a world where the line between cop and criminal dissolves into shared longing, professionalism itself becoming both the shield and the curse. Taken together, Thief, Manhunter, and Heat form the core of Michael Mann's cinematic canon. a triptych of crime films that chart the evolution of his visual style and thematic preoccupations. Each film explores the tension between professionalism, vulnerability, between a man's code and his capacity for connection. Once again, in Thief, Mann introduces the archetype of the disciplined outsider, a craftsman, defined by precision and control, trying to build a life beyond his work. In Manhunter, he internalizes that struggle, turning the procedural form into a study of psychological immersion and moral peril. And finally, in Heat, Mann expands his vision to operatic scales, portraying cops and criminals as mirror images locked in a shared pursuit of excellence and doomed by their own isolation. Across these films, and all of his films, Mann refines his language of light, architecture, and sound to express not just action, but always mining the inner lives of men defined by the worlds they've mastered. Ferrari is another perfect example of that. The Insider, perfect example of that. And ultimately, these main characters are undone by the humanity they unfortunately cannot escape. Thank you for watching.